discuss the next steps?
You didn't tell me yet. How exactly did you get here? Weren't you in Greyfell when the Harbinger took over?
No, I wasn't. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here. But we were on our way back the night it happened. As you can imagine, it was a hard choice to make. But eventually, I left my pride behind and realized attacking Greykeep with the little division I was traveling with would have been suicide.
So you fled?
We retreated. The rest is simple. We went to Iskander because we had heard the rumors about your army. There, we met one of your scouts, and then the elven woman, Iria of Finnonmere.
Oh, she decided to let you in?
Correct. You know the rest. Your people were a bit distrustful at first, and I don't blame them. After all, they'd been fighting the Royal Army not too long ago. But eventually, they realized that we were on the same side.
I hope that we are.
We are. Trust me.
I want to talk about Sentenza. His death.
Well, what is there to say? As I heard the story, he didn't leave you much choice.
So you're not angry?
For you defending your life? No. I never understood why he was so obsessed with hunting you down to begin with.
But he was acting on your orders.
Well, yes, strictly spoken, he was. You were a traitor. Or at least, that's what we thought back then. That witch hunt in Iskander, the battle at the Eye, that was his choice.
Why? Why did he want me dead so badly?
Well, I can only guess. But to me, it seemed as if he felt as if you had, I don't know, betrayed him. He always spoke highly of you. Did you know that? At times, it almost felt as if he considered you his own kin.
Well, if he did, he didn't show it very much.
That doesn't surprise me. Sentenza was never good at expressing emotions. You see, Tahar, in the end, both he and I are men born from war. Seeing people die at your command, hearing the widows and the orphans cry as a result of your choices, it changes you. You need to find a way to deal with it. And Sentenza did so by shutting off his emotions entirely. Or, at least, to the outside. But in the end, he always did what he thought was best for Northander. He saw the Harbinger's true face, even before he revealed it. And I brushed it off as his usual distrust towards anyone, which was, as you know, a fatal mistake. And who knows, maybe if I had listened, it would never have come to this.
Without the Harbinger, I'd be dead.
That's true. But this discussion isn't leading us anywhere, Tahar.
There's just one thing I still can't wrap my head around. How did Lacane become so powerful? How could he rally so many people behind him?
The big question, isn't it? In the end, I think it boils down to the fact that he poured salt into the wounds the Mage Wars had left in Northander. You see, it's not hard to rally people behind you if they are desperate enough. He just gave them a simple answer to a complex question. And the people believed him. Though I don't consider him a pragmatist, he really believes in what he says, that Aeonia will return once mankind has repented. Which worries me even more. There's nothing more dangerous than fanaticism fueled by magical power. Your father is the best example.
I am.
Good. Then let's call your companions.
Good. Now that you're all here, I'd like to plan how we proceed.
Tahar, I think you should allow yourself some more rest. You were in a coma for more than a month, and we still don't know what that melding actually did to you.
Isn't it obvious? It made him more powerful.
Yeah, but where does that power come from? What effect does it have on the human body or the psyche? We don't know.
I'm all right, Iskrim. Just trust me.
Fine. Then go on.
Thank you. So, our objective is clear. We need to defeat the Purity of Light and save my mother. Angar, am I right to assume that Lacane made Greykeep his new base of operations?
Correct. It's the center of his power, which is both good and bad. It's bad because Greyfell was built to withstand any kind of ambush.
And why is it good?
Because it also means if we succeed and reconquer Greyfell, we'll cut off the snake's head. Once we kill Lacane, the purity will fall. However, there's no point in fooling ourselves. That battle for Greyfell will be bloody, and if we want to have even the slightest chance of winning, we need to join the remaining houses.
Ultran, Hallet, and Wolfgar.
Yes. If we put this army together with theirs, we might stand a chance. Also, you should see if you can strengthen the alliances you already have, Tahar. I have a plan regarding that, so we can talk further once this meeting has been concluded.
So do I.
All right. So where do we start?
It's up to you. But before we can even think about arranging a conclave between the houses, we need to break that spell the Harbinger put on my sister Myra. Isgren, any ideas?
Actually, it should be simple. We need to find the one controlling her, take the rune, and, well, destroy it in the forge.
And who is controlling her? What if it's the Harbinger himself?
I doubt it. The manipulator has to be physically close to his subject, so it'll most likely be someone in Lady Myra's army. But your rune will react to another rune's presence, so once that person is near, you'll feel it.
Good. Then I have a plan. The Harbinger has taken up position in Iskander, between the Utran and the Everlight border. You know that place, Tahar. It's where your father started his rebellion.
The Loyalist camp. So what's your plan?
We strike in full force and take the castle. He'll be forced to initiate a counterattack, and my sister's armies, the Utran army, will be the closest ones at hand.
A bait.
Yes, we hold the castle against the main army, whereas you, Tahar, and a small troop get behind enemy lines. You find the rune carrier and strike from the shadows. Obviously, you'll have to act quick. We can't hold against the entire Utran army forever.
All right. So we take over the castle, wait for the Utran armies to cross the border, sneak behind our lines, and eliminate the rune carrier. And once Lady Myra is freed, we will try to gain the support of House Hallett and House Wolfgar.
Yes, though we'll need to take care of something else before that. But let's discuss this when the time comes.
Agreed. One more thing. This will be dangerous, and our original mission has been completed. In other words, if any of you are thinking of leaving, now is the time. Well, then we best get prepared now. I'll tell you when we head out.
Understood. Tahar, I'd also like to talk with you if you have a moment.
Corporal Tahar. A word, if you will?
Who are you?
Private Miller, Corporal. I'm from the Royal Army and came here with the Lord Marshal. We've captured someone who we suspect belongs to the Purity. He was seen in the deserted village outside this city, and he looks suspicious. He claims to be a simple courier sent to deliver a message to you, but we didn't want to take any risks. He's outside, near the entrance to the caves.
I see. Thank you, soldier. Dismissed.
Corporal?
Huh. Interesting.
Intriguing.
Oh, great. Another one. How often do you want me to tell you? I'm not a spy, and I'm not with Purity.
Wait! You're their leader, aren't you? Corporal Tahar.
Yes?
Well, then maybe you can tell these fools to let me go. Blazes, I knew it was stupid to take that job.
Cut the crap. I can tell a spy when I see one.
What? No, I'm not. Tiara's breath, if I were a spy, would I really have been walking around in front of your front door like that? I didn't know who you were, and I didn't know you're an enemy of the purity. I'm just a courier, and someone paid me to deliver a message to a Corporal Tahar. I had no idea it was the Corporal Tahar, and had I known, I would have told that guy who gave me the job to sod off.
Can I see this message?
Finally, someone who asks. Yes, it's in my coat pocket, and no, there's no poison in there to kill you.
Let me see. A meeting in Everlight. From a friend.
A friend, you see? Can I go now?
I'll think about it.
What the... Blazes, what's wrong with you people? What do you want from me?
As I said, I'll think about it. Just stay put.
As if I had a fucking choice.
Zalraka.
You again. What do you want?
Thank you, Corporal. Thank you. Now, don't get me wrong, but I want to get out of here as soon as possible. Do you think your guards will let me through?
They will. Stay safe.
I'll try.
Let's see.
Ah, I was hoping you'd come by. That was quite the surprise visit, wasn't it? The Harbinger couldn't have picked a better time for his attack.
I guess you could say that. How's your injury? That blast from the barrier looked quite painful.
The blast? Oh yeah, sure. I'm as good as new. One of the perks of being a light mage. Tahar, I'm sorry. For everything.
What do you mean?
Well, what you discovered in that dungeon. I didn't see that coming, honestly. I mean, I'd always felt you were different, but an experiment of your father? I would have never guessed. And now that bastard Lacane took your mother. It's just... one tragedy follows another. Now I feel almost ridiculous thinking about my supposed problems.
We can still save her.
Yeah, I know. And we will. Blazes. How crazy does that all sound? A half-shaper whose mother's spirit has been stolen by a religious fanatic. If all this weren't actually happening, I'd think I'd be watching a bad play. Though you'd definitely be the tragic hero in this. And I don't envy you.
I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine.
Are you? Tell me, Tahar. If you had had the choice, would you have wanted to know? About your mother and how you were born?
Yes. It's always better to know the truth.
Is it? Sometimes I wonder if the truth doesn't just make it all worse. Anyway, Shaper or not, it's good to have you back. Honestly, there were times when I was worried you wouldn't ever wake up again.
I'm touched.
You better be. Anyway, in case you were wondering, I'm not planning to leave now. If you need my help, I'll be here.
You don't need to stay. You know that, right? Our work with the Purity is over, and nothing's stopping you from going back on the road.
Save for the mage-murdering Lightbringers, right? Look, unless you want me to leave, I'll stay, and I'll fight. And no, I'm not trying to sound heroic. Apart from the fact that there's worse company than you, the dwarf, and the others we picked up along the way, I can't just stand by and watch while those bloody fanatics do their best to plunge this world into yet another war.
Thanks, Iria. I really appreciate it.
Great. And now that we've got that out of the way, you should get some more sleep. You still look like a walking corpse. Don't make a habit out of it. I'll talk to you later. Corporal? Need anything?
I would still like to know why you stayed with us.
You're insistent, you know that? But to be honest, I've been thinking about that since you asked me.
Found an answer?
2 answers, actually. First one, you know already. I'm a fugitive. And if the Purity or Nortander got their hands on me again, it wouldn't have ended well for me.
I understand. What's the second answer?
Well, that one's hard to put into words. You know, there's one thing I like about you, Tahar. Despite all you've been through, you still fight. You're trying to make a difference one way or the other. So many in your position would have given up long ago, but you keep on searching, as the Harbinger said back in Greykeep. And I respect that. More so, I can relate to it.
How?
Well, there's just so much shit going on in the world, and yet so many people just don't care. They try to use the chaos to their advantage or just look away. There were and still are times when I found this hard to bear. It was also one of the reasons I spent so many years on the road. Away from the wars, the intrigues, the suffering, and all those bloody idiots. Out there, it's just different. And sometimes I wonder if the trees maybe know more about life than we ever did. They grow, they live, they die. If we'd managed to do just that instead of killing one another in the meantime, this world would be another place.
So you're here because you want to change things. Is that what you're saying?
Change? No. I don't see how this world could or ever will be changed. But at least we do something. And, you know, there was a time when I'd forgotten that this was even an option. You reminded me of that. And that's why I'm following you. Now, please don't look at me like that. You wanted the answer, and that was my best shot at it. Now, let's get back to less serious topics, shall we?
Could you tell me a bit more about your homeland? Finn and Mir?
Well, it's not my homeland anymore, but yeah, shoot.
Elves have a very long lifespan. What's it like to live for so long?
Hard to say, since I don't know what a human body feels like. As an elf, you simply take it for granted. When I first realized how short a human life is during my travels, I was baffled. I've been on this world for 39 years now, and in the elven world, I'm hardly considered an adult. Here, I'd have delivered my 7th child by now. It's strange. That's the best way to describe it. But you know what I eventually came to realize?
Tell me.
That age doesn't necessarily make you wiser. I've talked to 30-year-old humans who understood more of the world than the ancient seers of Finn and Mir. It's all about experiences.
How is human culture different from elven culture?
I assume you mean Nortander from Finn and Mir? There isn't one elven culture, as little as there's just the humans. Generally spoken, though, I wouldn't say they're too different. Especially not compared to the orcs. Life is a lot slower, mainly due to our lifespan, and elves are even more defined by tradition than humans. They revere nature and value tradition and rules above all else, and they are extremely aware of what they say, how they say it, and to whom. Which also makes it very easy to offend an elf. I'm an exception in that regard, but that was something my vagrant years taught me. But then again, not all elves are like that. There are some who care as little about Ellen the White Tree and the traditions as a troll cares about his morning toilet.
What role does magic play among elves?
It's everywhere. Magic is considered a gift of Ellen, and it defines your standing in every possible way. We may have talked about that already, but the whole council who runs the country is made up of mages, which is why the Purity will have a hard time finding followers in Finn and Mir, should they ever be naive enough to try.
I doubt that will ever happen. Interesting. There was something else I wanted to ask.
Sure. What?
You never told me why you fled Finn and Mir.
Fair enough. You've given me little reason to distrust you, so... Oh well. Let's just get this over with. I already told you about my father, how to him I had always been more of an asset. Well, after my father died, I decided to become a novice.
A novice?
Someone aspiring to be a priest of Ellen. I don't know why I did it. It was something my father had always considered a backup plan if an arranged marriage wouldn't work out. Part of it was probably because obeying my father was all I knew at that time.
Was it difficult to receive the novitiate?
Not for me. First of all, I was a good candidate. I was still very young, not even in my 30s. And I already knew a great deal about magic and healing. Secondly, I was, after all, a pureblood. That helped as well.
What does life as a priest of Ellen look like?
Boring. Though not as boring as a Northander monk's life. You are free to have family and to indulge in the earthly pleasures. Still, your life is devoted to worship. And for a priest of Ellen, that means healing the sick and preserving Ellen's greatest gift, nature.
But something happened.
Yes. In my first year, I fell in love. That crazy, hot-blooded, head-over-the-heels kind of love that the bards all sing about. The boy felt the same way, and for the next year it was, well, it was perfect. It was the two of us against the world. Maybe you know that feeling.
And the priests didn't mind?
Priestesses. Only women are allowed to teach. And no, they didn't. Elves consider love to be a blessing of Ellen. Forbidding it would be near absurd. I have no clue where your monks got that idea from. Though, of course, that boy and I tried to, restrain ourselves when the situation demanded it.
What was his name?
Doesn't matter.
Huh. And I guess your romance didn't end well.
You guess right. But it was more than that. You know, I told you how I always felt estranged around other people. I knew how to put on a smile, how to make myself fit in, but it was always fake. Shallow. With him, it was different. Dramatic as it may sound, I thought I had finally found someone who understood me. Then there was the novitiate. Despite all the time I sunk into doing the crazy things lovers often do, I never failed as a student. Or, no, let's put it another way. I was the best, in every aspect.
Which didn't sit well with some people.
No. And eventually, they made sure I felt it. They excluded me from everything, stared at me when I walked by. It hurt, yes, but I convinced myself it didn't. I've always been good at that.
But what happened?
My lover's friends started manipulating him. Telling him that I only saw him as my pet, that he was a failure, and that I only kept him around to feel good about myself.
That's toxic.
It was. And their seeds met fertile ground. You see, we novices all knew that only 4 out of 20 will be granted priesthood at the end of our training. And being a failed novice leaves you with a mark you'll keep for the rest of your life. It all looked peaceful on the surface, but beneath that it was an arena. And these other novices, they made sure my friend became aware of that fact. To him, I started being a rival as well. And do you want to know the biggest joke of it all? I didn't see it. The idea that, I don't know, that he would listen to them. That he would ever reach a point where he'd put what we had below his hurt pride and his fears. It never crossed my mind.
So what happened?
Well, he knew I was curious by nature, so one night when we were in bed together, he suddenly asked me if I wanted to go on an adventure. Of course I said yes. So we snuck out into the cloister's courtyard. It was beautiful. The night was cloudless, and the old oak, our cloister shrine, had just begun to bloom. We made our way to the library building, but of course the door was locked. Out of nowhere, he pulled a key, grinning at me, and opened it. It was insane. As you can imagine, priests aren't known for being lenient towards these kinds of trespassings. We were risking our novitiate, and I didn't even know the reason, but I liked it. And we were doing it together, weren't we? It was exciting. He took my hand and we went to the High Priestess's office. We opened the door and went inside, and there he finally told me what we were here for, to open the grimoire, the High Priestess's spellbook.
Whatever that is, it sounds like that was a terribly bad idea.
It was. It was a stupid idea. And if I hadn't been so blind, so bloody naive, I should have seen it by then. But I didn't.
What did he ask you to do?
To open it and try to read one of the spells. He teased me. Told me that I wouldn't be able to do it. You know? Saying it like that. It sounds so bloody stupid, doesn't it? But again, I was too blind. I laughed. I wanted to impress him, so I gave him a kiss. Opened the page and started saying the words. Long story short, I lost control. The spell was too much for me to handle and it misfired. One moment I was staring at the pages, the next one, the library was aflame and my lover was gone.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I was the one too stupid to see it coming.
How far did that fire spread?
Not far. It was put out before it could do real damage. But, of course, that was the end of novitiate. I was thrown into the cell of shame and sentenced to 12 years of polishing prayer banks and cleaning floors in the shrine.
Your lover, did he regret it?
I think so. The only bloody gratification I ever got from this. But even if he would have confessed and begged me to take him back, I couldn't have. All that connection, that trust, it was gone. Worse, it was tainted.
Did you try to tell the priestesses the whole story?
No, I just sat there and smiled. Of course I did. But my love had all his friends to back him up. To them, it wasn't even a trial. It was a feast.
But you never did polish those prayer banks, am I right?
No. And the night after the trial, they still let me sleep in my chamber. Thoughtlessness, I suppose, or maybe they simply didn't care. I got my things, left, and never came back. So, here it is, the whole truth. No dark secrets, no assassinations, no necromantic rituals. Just a plain old broken heart. Compared with all that shit you had to go through, it almost sounds ludicrous.
It doesn't. Being betrayed by someone you trust often hits the hardest.
Yeah, I guess. It's just, I don't get it. How could he give all that up? I mean, there was something between us, you know? Something rare, something precious. But no, he threw it all away for his fucking vanity. But in a way, it's just a continuation of what I've always known. Wherever I am, I'm a stranger. People don't like me, and I don't like them.
For what it's worth, I'm glad our paths crossed.
Yeah, me too, Corporal. Me too. I'd like some space now. I hope you don't mind. Let's talk later.
Huh?
Tahar, what is it?
You knew about my mother, didn't you? That's what you hinted at back at the forge, before we set out to the Eye.
Well, the answer is yes and no. I had suspicions, let us call it that. But they weren't enough to go on, and I had no idea your mother was connected to the Bloodburn.
You should have told me.
Is that so? And exactly what should I have told you? That I believe you might be the result of your father's experiments? That you're the offspring of some long-dead, forgotten race? Tell me, Tahar, what for? I mean, at best, you wouldn't have believed me. And at worst, it would have cost you your sanity. So no, I don't think I should have told you. I didn't know if these suspicions had any substance at all. And I would have been at great risk, especially back then when you were still part of the rebellion.
Where did these suspicions come from? Did my father tell you?
No. And he never found out that I knew. Your father... I don't need to tell you how meticulous he was, do I? That's why he always kept notes of his experiments and studies. I found one, a notebook. The story's actually quite simple. Your father had gone out to meet with Aeolot Iskander, and had tasked me with cleaning up his laboratory.
Really? He never let me into his laboratory.
I know. And he wasn't exactly trustworthy towards me, neither. But you know Asamo. His mood was never what you'd call stable. One day, he'd think the entire rebellion had schemed against him. The next day, he told us that we'd change the world. It was part of his charisma, I guess. Sometimes I think the reason why the Mage Rebellion became so big was less of Asamo's magical powers, rather than his ability to create emotions in his followers. But we digress. So I had found this small booklet on his table. It didn't look important in any way, yet I was immediately curious. I opened it and started reading.
What was in there?
His experiments in the eye. The ancient woman, as he called her. Your creation, these waxwork figures which he tried to infuse with life. It was disturbing. And at the same time, fascinating, as you can imagine.
Do you still have that book?
No, of course not. I couldn't even read through all of it, else your father would have noticed that I had done nothing of what he had tasked me with. And I have no idea where it is now.
I figured. That book, did it say anything about how this ritual worked? Andrew said something about how the Shaper is conceived differently.
I don't think it can be compared to how two humans reproduce, if that's what you're thinking. But as for the details, I don't know. As I said, I barely had 1 hour. And I only got to the chapter about you in the very end.
So, why did he, well, create me? My mother said it was to gain access to the Archfire.
Yes, I think that was the main reason. Though I couldn't help but notice a certain, I don't know, warmth in his words when he described his plans.
Warmth. I guess I should feel honored.
Yes. Sounds cynical, doesn't it? Still, I don't think you were just a tool to him. You weren't. Tell me, Tahar, knowing all that, how does it make you feel?
I don't know. It doesn't change anything about the present.
No. I guess it doesn't. Either way, I think we both need some time to think. As I said, Tahar, I'm sorry that I didn't tell you earlier, but I simply didn't know what to do.
Huh. Intriguing.
Tahar, it is good to see that you have recovered. This place and these people lack guidance without you.
They did?
Yes. The Lord Marshal tried to assume control, but as you might have expected, he did not have everybody's support. I was even fearing an internal power struggle, and I'm glad it did not come to that. I must say, Tahar, your mother, she is remarkable. I have always wondered what the Shapers look like, and now I do. It is fascinating, though I suppose this is a difficult topic for you. Forgive me if my words were inappropriate.
It's all right.
Good. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Let's see.
What is it?
I've noticed that you use both white and black magic in combat. I've never seen anyone do that before. Don't the two schools exclude each other?
Normally, yes. The essence of white and of black magic deeply oppose each other. Trying to combine both of them usually has a similar effect on a mage's mind as adding water onto a patch of burning oil. I, however, never had that problem. The first time I found out was at the Arcane University in Greyfell, where I studied. The white magic spell I had cast on a rabbit to heal his wounded paw accidentally killed it. I was very young at that time, and I knew my professor would be upset if he found out, so I channeled my energy on undoing what I had done. As a result, I created an undead rabbit. It immediately went feral, and I put it back to sleep. But rather than feeling the terrible headache that had been described to us as an effect of combining these two schools, I felt a slight sense of, well, exhilaration. I secretly continued these experiments during my studies, and found out that whatever it is that causes this mental discord among normal mages did not affect me.
Do you have an explanation for this?
No, I do not. Maybe it has to do with the way my mind is structured, or maybe it is a simple coincidence.
Well, that's odd. Where did you grow up? You don't look Nortandian.
I do not, that is correct. I grew up in Imperia.
Imperia? That's a long way from here.
I know, but I hardly have any memories. My parents fled from the Civil War and set over to Northander when I was only 4 years old.
So you were refugees?
Yes, much like many Nortandians are now. We lived in the Utran lands, and my parents are still there.
And when did you discover your magic?
At a very early age. I believe I was 7 at that time. I must have had an outbreak, but I can hardly remember any of it. All I know is that my mother's employer, who was a mage himself, immediately took me in. I went to Everlight when I was 10, and did not leave there ever since. Until now.
What's it like to live in Northander as an Imperial?
Well, it was my impression that Utran people are by nature a lot more skeptical towards outsiders than, for example, the citizens of Everlight. All in all, however, I cannot complain. Both my father and my mother found work quite quickly, and thanks to my occupation as first scholar of the Creators Guild, they now live a quite comfortable life.
Interesting. You're the first Empyrean I've met.
I am not surprised.
So, Undergast, when you told me about your split with Lena, I got the feeling that you were more than just colleagues.
You are asking if we were in love. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Then let me start by telling you that the term love is undefined and that theories about it conflict one another. I have read a lot of books on it, and I've studied the poems, and I've come to the conclusion that it is ultimately a primitive, carnal urge that people have come to romanticize for the emotions that come with it. I, myself, never felt it, and maybe that was because I saw the underlying mechanisms. I always found it strange how people overreact so strongly to such a simple emotion, and maybe that very fact stopped me from being able to feel these emotions at all.
Well, what are the underlying mechanisms?
The desire to reproduce with a fitting mate. In fact, the orcs have a very dry, rational view on this process, but for some reason humans, dwarves, and elves do not.
Love is more than just that.
Well, most people would agree with you, and I'm certain that in your subjective experience it is.
So, what you're saying is that you were never able to feel love, but then Lena came along and you did.
No, it was not that simple. What stood out in our relationship was that we connected. I've never felt that before. You see, Tahar, to me, the bonds people have always felt peculiar, and I am not like Yana. Her mind simply does not have the ability to feel these bonds anymore. She had them once, but then she lost them, as she became a dreamweaver. My brain is capable of feeling these things, but I am unable to connect with the outside world. I only have my own mind as a frame of reference. For example, when a person tells you yes, whereas he or she means no, you might be able to feel this discrepancy because you are able to empathize with her. I can't. To me, this person's distress would make no sense whatsoever. But then there was Lena. For some bizarre reason, she understood me and I understood her. Or at least, I thought that I did. It was as if this barrier, this shell that separates my mind from others, was pervious to her emotions. I know how strange it sounds, and I also have no explanation for why this was, yet it changed me. All at once, I felt connected. Do you know this feeling, Tahar? You have traveled with these people for quite some time now. Is there anyone you were, well, fond of?
Well, yes, there is.
I see. Then you probably know how distracting such a feeling can be. To be honest, when I first became aware of that bond between Lena and me, I was horrified. I could not focus anymore. When I sat down to write my studies, I realized after hours that none of what I had written made sense at all.
Your inability to relate to others, is it innate?
Yes. If it were not, I might have considered my sudden connection to Lena as a symbol of overcoming. But it was not. Even though I felt connected to Lena, I was still unable to feel the same way towards others. This is what deeply confused me.
What did Lena make of all that?
Nothing. Unlike me, she did not try to analyze, to understand its origin. At the same time, she did not discourage me from pondering. I believe this is what made our relationship unique. Complete acceptance. She did not try to tell me how I should behave or feel, and neither did I. Even when she decided to leave the guild and I decided to stay behind, we both accepted each other's decisions.
Am I right to assume that your relationship ended with your disagreement over the Creators Guild abandoning its neutrality?
No, you misunderstand. We never had a relationship. Although the feelings were mutual and we, well, acted on them, we never felt the need to bind ourselves to some close-minded societal construct. But yes, you are correct. It was the disagreement that broke our bond. Quietly, she left and never returned again.
Do you feel, I don't know, betrayed?
Betrayed? No. By betrayal, people usually mean when someone behaves contrary to what they agreed on, or more often than not, as they would like that person to behave. I always found the word to be very misleading. Desires, wishes, and urges are natural things, and I always found the usage of such heavily judgmental words to be very childish. Lena did what she thought was right, and so did I. I have not and will never blame her for that.
What, so you didn't even argue? I have a hard time imagining that.
As I said, acceptance of one another's nature and decisions was a pivotal element in our interactions, though I did notice that my unwillingness to follow her on her mission caused her more emotional distress than she usually would have felt. You see, if there ever was a disharmony between us, it was when she tried to encourage me to embrace the world, as she put it. She told me that both I as a person and my studies would benefit from more first-hand experience.
Such as?
Well, anything. Traveling, studying the Tsarlanthep ruins first-handed, even visiting the city of Everlight every once in a while. She seemed to think that it could help me get a better understanding of the world. But again, she never tried to force me. I could tell that my unwillingness upset her, but like always, she showed acceptance.
How do you feel about this?
That is a good question. I still think about her, almost every day. But the more time passes, the more this entire episode starts to feel like a vague, distant dream, the way an elder must feel about youth. I do not know how I would feel if I ever saw her again.
I can imagine. Well, thank you for trusting me with this, Undergast.
You have nothing to thank me for. If this conversation helped you get a better picture of me, I'm glad we had it. But there is one more thing I would like to ask you, Tahar.
Tell me.
Do you have regrets? Do you ever feel as if you could and should have acted differently than you did act?
Everybody has regrets.
That seems like a deliberately vague answer. It could indicate that you do have regrets, but it could also indicate that you do not have them. But I understand. If you do not want to share this with me, you do not have to. You see, I've never told you this, but I find your resilience to be remarkable.
How so?
Well, it is no secret that you have endured a lot of pain, especially your early childhood must have made a mark on your psyche. But still, you did not give up.
Well, I'm doing what I can.
I can see that. Either way, I think we have spent enough time talking. We should get back to the tasks at hand.
We should. So long, Undergast. Did you ever think about what would happen if the Queen never wakes up from her coma?
She will wake up. The healers claim that she's already getting better.
They've claimed that ever since the dragon incapacitated her.
The Queen has Hibernian blood in her veins. And as long as her heart is still beating, I will not waste any time thinking about something that might never happen. Though, of course, that is not to say that others at the court haven't done it. Most people believe that Queen Aelith doesn't have an heir. But that's wrong. She does.
Really? Who?
A cousin. I suppose you know about the Queen's problematic ancestry. The ability to give life has always been impaired in her bloodline, which is why she does not have any brothers or sisters. However, it was rumored that her uncle, Anno Aelith, left an heir before he died. A bastard son.
It's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yes, because the Crown took measures to quiet these rumors. Suffice it to say that Queen Aelith's supposed cousin is far from an ideal candidate for the throne. But I will not go into detail on this topic. It is irrelevant. And it will stay irrelevant. Because the Queen will survive. I can feel it.
I wanted to talk about Leonon.
I had a feeling you would. Look. Back at Greykeep, the situation seemed crystal clear. You killed 3 of your brethren, and General Noria openly spoke out against you. Similar to my policy regarding the purity of light, I can now see that I was wrong. But again, all I did was to take all factors into consideration and decide accordingly. It was all I could do.
You also could have used common sense. I risked my life to help Northander back when I turned to my father. Why would I now suddenly start massacring Wolfguard soldiers?
You're right. I should have taken that into consideration. Either way, you've been pardoned. And more than that, now we're fighting side by side against the real scourge of the Empire. I don't hold any grudges against you. And I can only hope you feel the same.
The past is the past.
It is indeed.
You said that you have an idea on how we can get more allies to fight the Purity.
Yes, I do. It's someone you're already familiar with. At least, according to your friend Irian. The Iron Falcons.
You want to convince them to join our troops?
Not all of them, obviously. The Field Dog are an even greater threat than the Purity, even if most people nowadays have almost forgotten about them. What I suggest is that we strike a bargain with them. They give us a small division of their elite keepers, and we provide them with twice the amount of foot and maybe engineers to make up for it.
Engineers and infantry for a handful of knights. Is that really worth it?
It is. The Falcons aren't only excellent fighters. Their presence will also inspire our soldiers. They're living legends.
All right. It's worth a try. When do we set out?
Whenever you want. Thanks to these Godstones, it won't take us long to get there. So I'm not expecting this mission to cost us more than a day, 2 at most. We should probably take some troops with us, just in case the canyon is still unsafe.
Fair enough. I'll let you know when we go.
Good.
I'll take a look.
Tahar, how are you feeling? To be honest, I thought you were dead. While you were in that coma, I was unable to read or feel any thoughts and emotions emanating from your spirit. You were like a corpse.
I'm fine.
That's good. There is something else I would like to talk about. Maybe you have guessed it already.
Your friend. Now you know what killed him.
Her. She was a woman, and her name was Mila. But yes, that's right. Now I do. It was your mother. The Shaper.
What do you feel?
I don't know. Ultimately, the question I asked myself is, can there be culpability if there was no ill intent? I've done many things which people might consider evil, but then again, I didn't do them out of malice, but because I needed to. Because feeding my urges is the only way for me to survive. I know the situation is slightly different from your mother's. She didn't know her song killed people, but ultimately it did. So the question is she to blame for Mila's death? And if not, who is?
It's my father's fault. If he hadn't trapped her, none of this would have happened.
And you wouldn't exist. Isn't that a strange thought? At least I know now what happened. That alone gives me some kind of closure.
Do you hate me now? Or my mother?
No. Hatred is an emotion I rarely feel, if ever. If anything, I feel grief that the person who was dearest to me died such a pointless death.
I see. And what now? Will you stay?
Yes, I will.
For what it's worth, I'm glad that I can count on you.
It's good that you feel that way. Let us talk later if there's something to talk about, Tahar. Thank you for your time. Yes, Corporal? How can I help?
About you being an assassin. You said that you might be willing to tell me more about that at another time. How about now?
I'm still not certain. The question really is, do you want to know? It might change something.
Well, I wouldn't have asked otherwise. Tell me.
All right. Where should I begin? Do you remember what I told you about that man who bought me from the Greyfell Bazaar? My owner? I also told you that after an incident, he discovered my talents and made me an assassin.
I remember. But what does that have to do with your morality?
It's complicated. The incident took place at a festivity. A lot of highly influential people were there, servants of the crown, wealthy merchants, nobles. My master knew all of Greyfell's elites. As always, at these festivities, it was my and the other slaves' responsibility to ensure the guests' well-being. It must have been close to midnight when a man took me into his chambers. I'd learned to play along years ago, because resisting only made it worse. This time, however, was different. For some reason, that man wanted me to tell him that I loved him. I did, but he kept on telling me that I should say it like I really mean it. When I couldn't, he got angrier and started choking me. I had almost lost consciousness when I felt something break. I don't know how else to put it. It was as if my mind simply cracked open, like a crystal ball smashed against a mirror. And all of a sudden, that man and I weren't separate entities anymore.
I don't follow.
My magic, my dreamweavery, that's when it broke free. You probably don't know this, but the only way to become a dreamweaver is by shattering your mind. You are opening yourself to the thoughts and emotions of others, but you lose your own.
What happened to the man?
I killed him. It wasn't a conscious choice, looking back. I even think that shattering my mind was my body's way of ensuring survival. I closed my eyes, reached out for the man's mind, and just crushed it. The man gasped, lost balance, and fell right off the bed. He wasn't dead yet, but unable to move. Like a puppet rid of its strings. At first I was disoriented, but then I felt it, for the first time. The urge.
To kill him?
Yes. To massacre him. Hear his screams. To see his life taken by my hand. I grabbed a lantern that was standing on a bedside table and knelt over him, and... well, you can picture the rest. To get back to your original question, that urge, it stuck with me. I think that the moment when my mind shattered and I became a dreamweaver was what unlocked it. Ever since then, I've found violence and bloodshed to be ecstatic, erotic even. And when I kill someone, like I killed that man, I feel alive. Actually, it's one of the few times I am capable of feeling anything at all.
Huh. And this is why you became an assassin?
Yes. My master introduced me into the craft. Probably because he knew that my dream weavery had changed me. I wasn't just a slave child anymore. I was a weapon now. More than that, even. I needed what these new tasks my master sent me on provided me with. It had become a basic need of mine. Of course, I briefly considered changing my profession after my master had his accident. But I didn't. Killing is something I need, as much as a child needs the love of his mother. If I don't feed my urge, I will die. Not physically, but mentally. I just know this.
That's a lot to take in.
I know. Now tell me, Tahar. Do you regret asking me this question? Knowing all this, do you think I'm a monster?
You're not.
Really? That's unexpected. Anyway, I would like some time for myself now. I hope you understand.